Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of the PR from the Heart Children's Book Spotlight Series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 142. That is our 142nd trolley stop here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series at PR from the Heart. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager here at PR from the Heart. Thank you so much, as always, for spending some time with us wherever you are and wherever you may be and joining us here in our neighborhood. We, of course, are continuing this month of love. That is the month of February. And when we think of love, we think of our emotions, we think of our feelings, right? And a lot of times, especially even us as big kids, it can be a little bit challenging, right? We've got the sadness, we've got the grief, we've got the shame, we've got the anger, and we don't necessarily know what to do with it. A lot of times we've been programmed to push things down in the process, and that definitely does not help. We've learned that from experience, right? But especially with us being parents, caregivers, and custodians for our little ones, emotions and feelings, they can seem overwhelming for our children, especially when they're identifying them, when they're connecting with them for the first time in their life, or they're just kind of getting used to their emotions and feelings. But emotions and feelings don't need to be scary, right? And it's important that we do our part to be able to assure our little ones that, again, whether it be happiness, sadness, anger, fear, that everything is going to be okay. That's a little bit of a running theme over the past couple of weeks here on the Children's Book Spotlight Series, and that through our ups and through our downs, no matter what it is that we're going through, that God loves us, right? And it's important, again, that we're communicating not only this to us, to the inner child within us, but to our little ones as well, too. One of the most beautiful children's books of 2022 that we're going to be sharing, or that we're blessed to share here on this week's Trolley Stop on the Children's Book Spotlight Series, is helping our little ones, and yes, us as adults, as big kids alike, to know that God made all of our feelings, that they're perfect, they're whole, they're healthy, they're complete, just the way that they are, just like we are in the process. Courtesy of some of our favorite neighbors at Beaming Books, the brand new release, God Made All Your Feelings, is now available. You can head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can purchase your copy of God Made All Your Feelings, or you can head on over to the official website of our featured guest here on episode number 142 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. You can head on over to AmandaFlynn.com. The trolley heads out from San Diego all the way to Missouri, so we're racking some mileage here this week on the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Award-winning children's author Amanda Flynn joining us here to talk about God Made All Your Feelings. Amanda, thank you so much for spending some time with us here in our neighborhood and for putting out this beautiful, beautiful children's book for little ones, especially right now.
Thank you so much for having me. It's definitely a pleasure and honor to be here.
We encourage all of you, and you might be wondering, okay, are you guys going to be talking about emotions and feelings? Yes, we are, but it's going to be okay. We're going to be talking about them in a healthy, constructive, and empowering way, because, you know, many of us as adults over these past couple of years, especially through the pandemic, we've gone through a lot of challenges. We maybe experienced some trauma on different levels. So remember that children's books are also meant for us as big kids too. So if you feel that this message needs to be shared with someone that is moving through some sort of an emotional challenge right now, maybe someone that is just for the first time in their life really connecting with their emotions and feelings, if there's a little one that you know that's going through a challenging time as well, we encourage you to be able to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and share this very special trolley stop that is episode number 142 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Amanda, this is a very sensitive message that you're sharing, but you do it with such grace. As we were discussing in the PR from the Heart Green Room, this sort of message, it's not the easiest to convey. And when I saw the cover art of your book, it just felt like a big warm hug. And that, you know, again, as I communicated, emotions and feelings, they're not always easy. And then, like, if we have a little one, okay, we have to explain to them about emotions and feelings. We always like to start each Children's Book Spotlight Series episode prior to communicating and talking about the book itself, kind of go back in the Wayback Machine. When did things really begin for you where you knew that you were called here by God to be able to share your message with the children? Was it a specific experience or series of experiences that you moved through early on in your life?
Oh, wow. So I think, I mean, going way back to the vault of my beginning, I've always had a connection with written word and with stories. I think that many of us do. When we read stories, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, or they're told to us, especially picture books, which have always held a big place in my heart, uh, we connect with those. We connect with the message, and we can see ourselves, in the main character, or we can see ourselves, with our own experiences and our own memories. And I think for me, growing up, I was a shy child. I loved to go to the library every week with my dad. I connected with books in a very personal way. And I always knew that someday I wanted to write books. And even though I was raised in a Christian home, I didn't really connect those two things as a calling on my life to write. I didn't go to school for that. I didn't, pursue a career in that. I was never, in my high school, like journalism team. I didn't do yearbook, any of that, any of those things that would have prepped the way for me. But in God's own way, he was putting this dream inside of me. And I always loved to rhyme. I love to write poetry. This is a very lyrical book. And so I think that as God does, this book is a collaboration of my life experiences. As a human, I felt all of the things that are in this book. I felt all of these emotions. Sometimes I feel them all in one day. And, the more that I've learned about leaning into God's voice and his call on my life, he helps me kind of sort through when I am feeling sad or when I am feeling overwhelmed and anxious. So go ahead.
I appreciate you expressing that, because there's times in our life, and I think this is where our faith is extraordinarily important. We can feel like we're the only person on the planet. And there's times where we feel no one even understands us. We could have this huge support system, great family, great friends. And if we're moving through something challenging, something heavy, maybe you've heard of the term, the divine storm, where it could kind of seem like everything is going wrong all at once kind of thing. And this is really where we rely on our faith. When you made the decision, obviously, to step into the world of children's literature, whenever we do something for the first time, whether it be we become a published author, we become a mom or a dad for the first period in time, the first time in our life, we can have our own fears, insecurities, anxieties. Could you share with us maybe some of the things early on that you experienced when you knew that you were meant to be able to write children's books, some of the fears and anxieties that you moved through, and how essential your faith was, not only during those times, but other challenging moments in your life so that you could move through whatever it was that you were moving through?
Anytime we do something new, you mentioned parenting, becoming a parent for the first time, or stepping into your calling, writing a book. I think the fear there is rejection. We don't want to be rejected. Even though a lot of times that's how we grow, is through those experiences. And just fear of the unknown. We can't always control the outcome. We can't control how our message is going to be received. We can parent to the best of our ability, and we can't control, how our children are going to turn out. We want them to be good citizens, but some of that we just have to lay that fear, lay that unknown into God's lap, really lay it at his feet. And I think that's kind of where that trust piece comes in, is we learn to walk daily, with God, and we learn to trust in his presence, and that we don't have to have it all figured out. We can learn as we go, and we're going to mess up. We're going to have highs, we're going to have lows. And I think for me, just trusting that I'm really not alone in this, and it's okay to have a fear, it's okay to be scared, but that God walks with us through that.
That's a beautiful share, and that does provide a lot of comfort for us when we are moving through, again, whatever it is that we're moving through, knowing the fact that things always work themselves out. If you ever notice in life, there's times where it's like you're experiencing something, whether it be the car accident or the breakup of the relationship that you're in, and you're like, oh, this is it. I'm not going to survive it. This is the most painful thing that I've ever experienced. But things always not only have a way of working themselves out, but even sometimes better than you can expect. And I think us, being able to convey all of this information to children, it's important because we have a great responsibility to raise the next generation of little ones so that they don't necessarily have to go through what we had experienced growing up on our end of things. As I communicated with you, the way in which you're sharing this message of emotions and feelings, you're doing such a wonderful job with this. Obviously, with the pandemic, children had their own things that they were experiencing before. And then as the result of the pandemic, there were other things that they were moving through. Children went to seeing their friends every day, and now they can't see their friends. Now they can't see their teachers. Now they're learning from home kind of thing, right? The whole social distancing thing. So the timing of your book coming out now as things are starting to open up a little bit is fantastic. Could you take us back to when you knew that this specific message needed to be shared and the way in which that you're communicating with it? Could you unpack when that was at a specific aha that you experienced, or was this something that you had a calling, a knowing for a long period of time? It was just a matter of the when and which publishing company was going to be working with you in the process, so to speak.
Yeah, of course. So with this book in particular, I believe I wrote this in 2019. So it was pre-pandemic. And as God usually does with all of my stories, usually a phrase will pop in or a feeling will come up. Even a book not about feelings, something will come up, a phrase or an experience, or I'll notice something out in nature. And at this time in my life, I was wanting to be published. So I was writing furiously every single day, working on the craft. And I was also running an in-home daycare. So I had children, in this age demographic. I was surrounded by them every single day. And so I was caring for not only my own kids, but also other people's children. And so we experienced all of these feelings multiple times a day. And they were kind of my inspiration, really, as I was writing. And I remember this book in particular started with happy. And the phrase that popped in is the very first phrase in this book, when we are happy, filled with light. And I just really, I don't know, the light of God's presence has always been something to me, like just knowing that He is light. And He's light in a dark place, and He lights up, everything, our lives, our presence. You can feel God's presence when you walk into, a room that's just filled with it. And we carry that with us as well. And so that one phrase kind of started it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the rhyming just came through that. And again, that was pre-pandemic. We've always needed this message, but God's timing to bring it out then and to have it published in 2022, where we are still dealing with the ramifications of what you said, that we've experienced a lot more than normal. And so I think for me, just believing in God's timing for this book and knowing that even when it was important when it was written, it's even more important that we convey this message now in the time that our kids are growing up in, and the time that we're in right now.
The fact that you also convey and talk about emotions and feelings in a very positive, affirming way. Why was that, and why is that important to you? Because there's a lot of times when we see things on the news, or just a lot of it is fear-based, like emotions, feelings. We think like they have to be heavy, it has to be bad. Why was and is it important for you to be able to not sugarcoat things, so to speak, but to convey this in a very positive, reaffirming way for our little ones?
I think the general message of the book is that, like, no matter how we're feeling, that God knows us and that He loves us and that He's near to us. Sometimes our feelings can lie a little bit. I mean, if I'm speaking to the adults in the room, sometimes our feelings can lie a little bit. And so it's like, we want to tune into what those are, but then we also have to remember the truth. So we can feel like we're alone. We can feel afraid. We can feel that things aren't going to get better, but that's not always the truth. And so sometimes, leaning into the truth, and I think that's why scripture pairs well with this book, is because that's the affirmation of the truth, is that no matter how we're feeling, we can be scared in that moment, we can be sad in that moment, but that God is still with us, and that he's not going to leave us, that there is a promise of hope and truth. And I think sometimes that's the message that we need, even as adults, is that it's okay to feel this way, but you're not always going to feel this way.
It's interesting that we're, as you said, talking to the adults in the room right now, because one of the things that I've seen in the 8 years of doing publicity work and working with children's authors and being with kids, is that there's a lot of times that adults bypass their own emotions and feelings and just kind of stuff them down. Before we dive into the pages of God Made All Your Feelings, why do you feel that us as adults really need right now, especially with everything that's going on in the world and in our own lives, why is it really vital to be with our own emotions and feelings?
I think the biggest reason there is just, that's how we grow. If we get to a place where we can understand how we're feeling, and that our feelings sometimes do impact our relationships and the people around us. And relationships really are like the most important thing, as far as the people that we interact with, the people that we are mentored by, the people that we mentor. I mean, the way that we feel kind of affects all of those things. It affects our parenting, it affects our marriages. And if we're not honest about how we're feeling, those areas that are weaker, those areas that are painful, even though maybe those memories that are painful from a past relationship or a past hurt, if we don't deal with those things, we can't heal from those things. And so I think we have to get to a place where we are honest with ourselves about how we're feeling, not just sweeping it under the rug, not just numbing with Netflix, whatever that is, where we can heal from those things, because God is a God that heals us. And so I think that's, giving that message to our kids is super important, that they can grow up knowing that, hey, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel this way. I understand that you're mad, that you're disappointed, that, that you're feeling out of control. Now here's what we can do about it.
There's a certain thread of Mr. Rogers and his message and his presence. I always love when there's like a little Mr. Rogers energy inside of the heart of a children's author and in a children's book. And, I always go back to many episodes of The Neighborhood where he would, encourage little ones to be with their emotions and be with their feelings. Especially there was an episode, he had a song that says, "What do you do with the mad that you feel?" Right. And he was just so like the fact that you're in your own way kind of carrying on Mr. Rogers' legacy, it's pretty cool. I have to share that. Again, we appreciate all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars for spending some time with us here in our neighborhood, episode number 142 of Pierre from the Heart's Children's Book Spotlight Series. Joining us is our featured guest, award-winning children's author Amanda Flynn. We are almost ready to dive into the pages of her brand new children's book, God Made All Your Feelings, now available courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Beaming Books. If Amazon is your preferred online vehicle of choice, you can head on over there, purchase your copy, and leave a 5-star review. That's one of the many ways that you can support Amanda, and remind her that she is doing wonderful and much-needed work for children, parents, families, educators, those who are moving through strong emotions and feelings at this particular point in time in the process. And also, I'd like to give a little shout out to Sejung Kim, who did such a wonderful job with your illustrations. I want to speak to that now. I feel that in life, especially as adults, we can overcomplicate the heck out of things, right? And then when we're realizing with children's books, this is very simple. The illustrations are very soft. They're very bright. They're very colorful. One of my favorite spreads is when you see the little ones, it looks like they're playing marbles, and just like the looks on their faces, it's like they're this childlike innocence. Talk to us about the experience of not only working with Beaming Books, but also your illustrator, because a lot of times when you're published, it's not like you're besties with your illustrator on the line talking 5 hours a day, talking shop. You have to trust that it's like two hearts beating as one, coming together to bring this message the way in which it's meant to be shared. So could you share this a little bit about the experience of working with Sejong and having the book come out so beautifully as it has, especially with the illustrations?
Yes. So first and foremost, I am so glad that that I don't have to do anything, any of the choosing or any of the drawing or any of the illustrating. That's not my forte. So I'm so thankful that God has also called other people to this work, that they can make beautiful illustrations. Because, you know, as a writer, like you said, you just have to trust that the publisher knows what they're doing, that they're going to hire the right person for the job. And so I was so pleasantly surprised. Again, the girl on the cover, just beautiful. I absolutely love the cover. That's usually one of the first pieces of art that the writer gets to see, is the cover art. And Beaming Books has been great. I have another book published with them as well. They're always really good about saying, hey, here's who we're looking at for an illustrator. What do you think? And both times they have gotten it completely right, spot on, ties so beautifully to the message. So I think that she did an amazing job. And no, we haven't had a lot of conversations. I did reach out to her on Instagram and say hello and introduce myself and just thank her for her art. We've had a couple, you know, opportunities where I've asked her to share, you know, some images with me for promotional items. But she's been great to work with. I agree. I almost felt like, you know, I told you I grew up going to the library every week. It is it's new, it's modern, but it also has that whimsical, nostalgic, kind of that slow, like feel of like when I was a kid type book. And so that was neat to see that. And yeah, just the slowing down of like just the marbles and the merry-go-round, you know, like I'm like, do they still have merry-go-rounds? But, you know, just kind of brought me back to my own childhood.
And it's interesting that you mentioned about the merry-go-rounds. I'm not sure if you've ever been to San Diego, but one of the beautiful parks that's one of the largest in the country is Balboa Park. They actually have one of the oldest carousels here in San Diego, and it's so fascinating how things come full circle. It was actually made in the Buffalo area, which is where I lived beforehand. So short answer to your question, they still do have carousels and merry-go-rounds as well too. And I really love how you shared about like the slowing down of things, because especially now with little ones, it's always fast-paced electronic stuff, attention spans maybe even smaller, shorter than what they were beforehand. Right. And I think that not only it's our responsibility as parents and caregivers and custodians to talk to our little ones about emotions and feelings, but to just say like, it's okay to chill. It's okay to enjoy life. And like we even saw this during the pandemic. It was kind of like kids couldn't go to baseball games or, you know, the amusement park or concerts. It went back to the playing of marbles outdoors or reading books, things along the lines of that. One of the things that we always love to do here is to dive into the pages of your book without giving away the whole kit and caboodle, so to speak. Right. So could you share with us God Made All Your Feelings and really some of the key specific points and themes within the book that you really feel have helped to create such a great connection and understanding with little ones? And I'd love to be able to hear some of the feedback, some of the independent feedback that you've heard from children and parents, and how supportive this book has been thus far, very early on.
Yes, of course. So, you know, for me, like I said, it started with happy and then, you know, immediately went to sad. I think the one that I connect with the most, and I was thinking about this earlier, is that feeling of anxiousness. You know, and we all get anxious for different reasons. I was a very shy child. I mentioned that, and that's a feeling that's described in the book. And anxiety, I would have said, I'm, you know, early 40s. I never had dealt with anxiety really until probably around 2019. So a little bit pre-pandemic. And I kind of like, no, this isn't anxiety. You know, I'd hear other people describe it. No, this isn't it. And so I think for me, the feeling of anxiousness is the one that I connect with the most now, as I've learned to kind of work through what that looks like in my life, because sometimes our feelings manifest differently. And, you know, anxiety for one person may not be what anxiety for the next person looks like. And I think for me, even the scripture that is on that one, and we're, well, at the bottom of the couplet, it says, God says, child, rest, be still. And then, yes, my soul find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Be still is actually tattooed on my wrist, and I've had it here for quite a while. But that was really the first message that I feel like God spoke specifically to me, like when I was seeking him as a young adult. And I was a new wife. I had a new child. You know, I'm trying to control all the outcomes. I'm trying to like really like worry about things I didn't need to worry about. And I feel like that's that God spoke to me. And really it was in Psalm 46:10, even though that's not the scripture I use, but it was, you know, be still and know that I am God. And that one has been powerful to me. So I really wanted to put that one into the message of this book, is just be still. And that's kind of what we were talking about, that slowing down aspect. Now, I did have a little boy that read this book. He's about 8. And his mom reached out to me and said, you know, hey, he loved the book. He came to me later and he said, my favorite page was the little girl that was doing her homework. Well, funny thing is, that's also the anxious page. And he said, Mom, I really liked that page. You know, so she was anxious about school, and sometimes I'm anxious about school. And so just getting to hear that he was able to relate, again, see himself in the pages and notice, hey, she's doing her homework. She seems a little bit worried. She's anxious. Her parents are there. And he was able to relate that to, sometimes that's how I feel about school, and have that discussion, just start that discussion with his parents. So I think getting feedback like that, I had another friend reach out and say that they've been reading the book every night, her and her 7-year-old daughter, and they've been reading the book at night. And one night she walked in and the little girl was praying. And she's like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I was talking to Jesus. And she was like, okay, you know, and she referenced the book, you know, that the little girl, she's laying in her bed and she's scared. And that is something that the little girl gets scared about, going to bed dark, you know, that's a common fear for children. And she had adapted that to the words of the page, like, oh, I can talk to Jesus about this.
I love that.
And again, so just things like that, just being able to realize, you know, that God is there, that we can bring that to him, and that he does offer comfort to us during those times.
It's got to be such a good feeling for you to know that this book, that your book is really a conduit. If anything, it's a matter of like, here's God, here's the little one, and here's your book. And it's just a beautiful way of soothing the minds and the hearts and the souls of little ones if they're moving through anything. One of the other things that I really love about your book is it's a very soft, gentle way to be able to introduce little ones to scripture. And sometimes, you know, like when you hear the term Bible, it can turn people off real quick, right? If something is churchy, right? It can, nope, don't want my kids exposed to that in any way, shape, or form. You obviously, as we've discussed here in our time together thus far, you have a strong faith-based component, and this book will resonate with some a lot. It may not necessarily resonate with everyone. Talk to us a little bit, if you could, about why you wanted to be able to include some scripture passages in there, you know, knowing the fact that especially during times of, I think this goes back to the Beatles song, in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me. So it kind of goes back to that faith-based component, right? Why did you feel that it would be helpful to be able to include this and really provide more comfort and reassurance to little ones and to parents and families?
You know, I think for me, you know, when going through and really taking a deep dive into common feelings and common emotions that we all experience, I really just felt like ultimately, you know, a book can be helpful. You know, hearing a word from a friend can be helpful. All of these things can be helpful, but really the ultimate source is the Word of God. So if we can draw people back to that, I mean, that's where you're going to get your, I don't want to say constant comfort. But, you know, if you learn to dive into scripture and you learn to, you know, read God's word and allow him to speak to you through his word, that's where you're going to get that reassurance. So books are great. You know, I mean, God speaks to me when I'm walking my dogs in nature. He speaks to me, you know, through friends. He speaks to me through all of these things. But ultimately, he wants to speak to us through his word as well. And I think if we can I think that's too many times. That's a dusty book that sits on the shelf that we're not accessing. And so not everyone is going to read this and then go to the scriptures. But if parents want to take a deeper dive with their kids, then that gives them a starting place to do that.
I agree. And anytime when you go into like the book of Psalms, for example, there's always a lot of reassurance. And there's sometimes, again, you know, whether I know that I was born and raised Catholic. So like I did altar server, Eucharistic minister, whole 9 yards, did that. I classify myself more spiritual now than religious, but I still find myself connecting with different sorts of, you know, Bible passages or stories. I pray to the Blessed Mother every day on mine and things. So I feel to be able to have that faith-based component and do it in, again, a very soft, reassuring way that you're doing, I think is absolutely fantastic, which is wonderful. Again, we are beginning to wind down our time with one of our newest neighbors here at PR From the Heart, Amanda Flynn, award-winning children's author, joining us as our featured guest on episode number 142 of PR From the Heart's Children's Book Spotlight series. If you're enjoying this episode thus far and you're saying, I would like to purchase my copy of God Made All Your Feelings, you can head on over to Amanda's official website, amandaflynn.com. You can also head on over to Amazon. That is your preferred online vehicle of your choice. And you can leave a 5-star review after purchasing and reading your copy of God Made All Your Feelings by leaving a 5-star review. That's one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Amanda and remind her and the team at Beaming Books that they are doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books. We always love to provide some tangible, useful, supportive information for parents and for educators that watch the Children's Book Spotlight series, so they can extract something immediately from our episodes and be able to help their little ones or their students in real time, so to speak. Again, you know, big responsibility we have, whether we're a parent, whether we're a caregiver, or I tend to use the term custodian. So let's say we're maybe, you know, the godmother, the godfather of a little one, or maybe like, for example, here in my development that I live in here in San Diego, there's always kids outside. I read to them whenever I can. So I'm kind of like a father figure in certain respects to some of them. What are some ways in which we can help our children, and then for educators to help their students learn to embrace and connect with their feelings on an even deeper level right now?
You know, I think that the biggest thing to start out with is just listening. You know, I think sometimes we live in a society that's hectic and busy and we're rushing from one thing to the next thing. And I think just stopping when our kids come to us, one, we want them to be able to come to us. And if we turn them away too many times, you know, then they learn that we can't be trusted with their feelings or with their emotions or with their questions. And so I think as parents and educators and caregivers is just taking the time to listen and to be listeners, not to provide the answer, not to know it all, not to, you know, shut it down. We don't have to have all the answers because God does, you know? And so I think that if we can just learn to listen and to have compassion and to understand how our little ones are feeling, I think that will go a long way.
And I feel that this is something that it doesn't necessarily need to be challenging as much as before, right? I feel that we have different roadmaps and different tools. Like I said, you know, your one of the terms that I know Mr. Rogers would always talk about is resources of care, right? If there's probably parents right now that are wondering, like, how do I start talking to my kids about their feelings? I don't know where to begin, because maybe they have a disconnection with their own feelings. So knowing the fact that your book is there as a resource of care to be able to help parents, it just provides some additional reassurance in the process. In life, everything is a teacher. We always learn every day. There's some people who will use the term earth school, that even though we're done with high school and college, or we got the PhD or whatnot, we're always still learning, we're always still growing. I'm curious to know what God made all your feelings has taught you about yourself and also taught you about life?
I think that anytime that you pour one, it's taught me to trust God in the process.
Hmm.
When a story idea comes and I kind of take that obedient yes, I don't ever know what's going to happen. I have stories on my computer right now that are ready to go out, but trusting God's timing with each story, and that he's going to deliver it into the hands of the right people, that he's going to get it, to the right publisher. And I think so trust, I think anytime you write a book, there's trust involved with that. And also just that, our worth, our self-worth, and this may sound crazy, doesn't really come from what we do. It's just who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so just knowing that, I think I have a lot of friends who are on this publishing path as well. And it can feel frustrating or disheartening when you don't have a contract, when you don't have, a book deal in your hands. And I think even moving forward, even though I have 2 books now out in the world, moving forward into, I don't know what's going to happen next, and just having that obedient yes to write the words that God places on your heart, even if you don't know what the outcome is. And so learning to just trust him with that process,
Mm-hmm.
and just know that, hey, your yes is what you can control. You can't control the outcome. And so I think for me, that's kind of what publishing in general has taught me. And I'm always learning more about myself. My husband and I say this all the time. We've been married for 17 years, and each year that we spend together, we get to know each other better. And I think that's same with the relationship with the Lord. The more time you spend with someone, the better you're going to get to know them, the more trust that you're going to have with that person.
Absolutely.
And so, I think as parents, you spend a lot of time caring for your infant. And as they grow, the hope is that they will trust you, that they'll come. We do a lot of times a good job of pouring into our kids that way, but also using that same concept to pour into our marriages, to pour into our relationship with other people, to pour into our relationship with God. Because that's how we're going to get to know ourselves better. And that's how we're going to have stronger connections with people.
I love the way that you communicated that, because that's really, as you said, that's how stronger trust develops over the course of time, especially that we have with ourselves, our relationship with God, the relationship with our spouse, the relationship with our children. I can tell that you care a lot about people. And I love the fact how you help to mentor writers and aspiring authors who really want to be able to get their message out there. What would be a message that you would like to share, a message of encouragement for maybe someone who's on the writing path and they've had the 65 rejection letters, and they could easily walk into a bookstore and see your book or see the wonderful work that you've done to this point and say, Amanda's got it made in the shade, right? It's rainbows and gumdrops for her. What would be some words of advice and encouragement that you would like to be able to share with authors who may be struggling a little bit right now, or might just be wondering whether or not they're on the right path?
For sure. I mean, definitely 100%, just that your self-worth does not come from the work that you produce, but also just that it takes time. Surround yourself with people in the community who are doing what you want to do. I have been so blessed to connect with other writers in the industry who have been so gracious to teach me what they know, to guide me, to answer questions that I have. I had someone reach out to me today on Instagram and said, hey, I hope this is okay. Can I ask you a few questions about publishing? Of course you can. Like, that's how you learn. And so I think as writers, we have to be willing to, one, admit that we didn't get here on our own, because there's a whole team of, people usually that have guided you to this place. And then it's our duty to turn around and to mentor the next people that are coming up behind us.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to have it all figured out to turn around and help the next person that's coming up behind you. And then just being encouraging. One of my writer friends who lives in my same town, we had books that came out on the same day. They both released on the same day as her first debut children's book. I had mine as well. And I'm her hype girl. So I mean, as much as I talk about my own book, I am going to talk right alongside her book as well. I have another friend who's in my critique group. Her book is sitting right here behind my computer. So being a hype girl, being a cheerleader for the people who are also doing what you do is super important. And just helping people out along the way, I think to me, like there's no greater joy than that.
That's very true. Putting more good out into the world, you have to trust the fact that it eventually, you kind of leave the details to God. You just put more good out into the world and eventually it makes its way back to you. The two ways that we like to close out each children's book spotlight series episode are as such. We've mentioned his name a couple of times, Mr. Rogers, of course, the longtime beloved host of the children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He did this different times during the neighborhood, and especially in different sorts of talks that he did, college commencement speeches, most notably when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Daytime Emmys shortly before he passed from stomach cancer. And he always kept the time, Amanda, whether it be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or 60 seconds. He encouraged us to remember those who helped love us into being. And that was his way of saying, remember those on your path. Remember your cheerleaders, your earth angels that lifted you up when you were down, that maybe saw that spark of divinity within you and you didn't see it within yourself. Who would be some of the people that you would like to publicly recognize here in episode number 142 of the Children's Book Spotlight series who helped love you, Amanda Flynn, into being?
Oh, wow. I wasn't prepared for this. You know what? I think my husband, honestly, he has been my biggest support in this. So I think for him, he's not a reader. He's not a writer. We are completely different in almost every way, but he has cheered me on to no end about following my dreams and going for it and being supportive when I want to go to a writer's conference or I need some, quiet time around the house. So first and foremost, my husband has been great. My parents have always been supportive. My sister is an artist. She would like to get into children's publishing as well. She is 100% my hype girl and will cheer on anything that I write and put out into the world. And just the writer mentors and friends that have helped along the way. Michelle Medlock Adams, she sat down with me. She lives in my husband's hometown. I reached out to her, said, hey, can we grab coffee? And she sat with me for an hour and just taught me what she knew. And that was instrumental and kind of started this snowball effect of going to a conference and meeting an agent and, signing my first contract. And so just people like that who are just willing to just share their life experiences with you, completely changed my path.
I feel it's always important to be able to recognize those people each and every day. Take that 5 seconds, that 15 seconds, because that's also a way. I think that Mr. Rogers communicated that whether they're still here with us on earth or whether they're up in heaven, they know that the impact that they made on your life is still being felt now. We always also close out our episodes. One of the favorite, beloved Disney animated classics that we always remember is Aladdin. And the Genie of the Lamp, of course, the legendary late Robin Williams, who played the Genie of the Lamp. We as human beings, as fellow open hearts and souls, we have the abilities to bring to form and shape our own dreams, desires, goals, and visions. And thus we can do the same for those in our lives too. And so as a little tip of the cap to the Disney movie Aladdin, we have a little segment called 3 Wishes. And this is a genie lamp, of course. You have given freely, Amanda, for your entire life, to your husband, to your family, to children all across the country and all around the world. So you're being given 3 wishes here on this week's episode of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Now they can be used however you wish. I think that there's, 2 things that are the automatic disqualifiers. You can't ask for more wishes and you can't have someone fall in love with you, but everything else is fair game. So what would your 3 wishes be?
My 3 wishes. Wow. I mean, they'd probably be pretty big. Like I would like to end pretty much, poverty, human trafficking, things like that. Could I have big wishes like that? Oh man, I don't know. I wish I had something like I just wished for chocolate cake, but you can't ask an Enneagram 4 what their 3 wishes were because I'm thinking about all of these like big world problems that I need to solve with 3 wishes.
Well,
But
I feel that those are 3 big wishes, and you can have the chocolate cake. I think that there, as the expression goes, you can have your cake and eat it too as well. But again, this is just the acknowledgement of everything that you're continuing to do, and no doubt will continue to do for children, parents, families, and educators moving forward from here. Again, we encourage all of you, if you haven't had the opportunities to do so, to head on over to Amazon.com to purchase your copy of Amanda's brand new children's book, God Made All Your Feelings, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Beaming Books. While on Amazon, if that is your preferred online vehicle of choice, you can leave a 5-star review. Again, that's one of the many ways that you can support Amanda and the team at Beaming Books, reminding them that they're doing such wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books in the process. And you can stay connected with Amanda on social media. We've included her social media platforms in the description below, and keep this conversation flowing post Children's Book Spotlight Series. Raise your hand if you have had fun on episode number 142 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. We see many hands from myself and Amanda, hands for the little ones on screen as well too. If this message has inspired you, if it's brought hope and healing and joy into your heart, if you say, Amanda and John, I am now ready to connect with my own emotions and feelings, no matter what your age is, or to be able to help your little ones do the very same. If you haven't had the chance to do so, we encourage you to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel, and to share this very special trolley stop that has been episode number 142 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series on your favorite social media platforms of your choosing. Before we close out, if you're a children's author and you would love to be able to share your inspiring story on the release of your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, you can head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or stay connected with us via any of our social media platforms and connect with us there at PR From The Heart. And of course, as we've mentioned, one of our favorite neighbors, Mr. Rogers, we also want to give 2 tips of the cap, beginning with one of our favorite neighbors in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You remember him and you love him as the beloved Mr. McFeely on the long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We know him and we love him as David Newell. Over the course of this past year, David has been very kind to join us on PR From The Heart's Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, where together, David and I, we deliver heartfelt reviews from the newest children's books from the shining stars in the kidlit community here at PR From The Heart. If you are a children's author and would love to have David and I feature your brand new book on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast here in 2022, you know where to connect with us via our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or any of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at PR From The Heart. And also one tip of the cap as well, too, to one of our favorite neighbors here in San Diego, California, Laura Kavanaugh, the host and executive producer of San Diego Living, which airs on the CBS 8 morning show. She is my official co-host for Empowering Reads for Kids, which is the official television book review segment here at PR From The Heart. If you indeed are interested in having Laura and I review your brand new children's book with children, parents, families, educators, sharing your heartfelt message with everyone here in America's finest city, that being San Diego, California, on the CW San Diego CBS 8. If you would like to have your brand new book or books be reviewed on a forthcoming edition of Empowering Reads for Kids, you know where to connect with us via our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or any of our social media platforms at PR From The Heart on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter in the process. One final time again, head on over to Amanda's official website, stay connected with her on social media, and of course, purchase your copy of God Made All Your Feelings, which is now available on Amazon. As we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. So we want to thank all of you for your continued support here of PR From The Heart in the Children's Book Spotlight Series, for children's authors and illustrators such as Amanda, who are doing much needed work for little ones, for parents, for families and educators all across the country and all around the world, for your support of local libraries, independent bookstores, and children's bookstores, truly the pillars of our community. And above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home, the children of the world. Mr. Rogers always said 143. That was his way of saying, I love you. 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, and 3 letters in you. As Amanda was very kind to give us some of her free time here this week, we want to remind you 243. That is our way of saying that we love you. Our reminder to you that you are perfect, you are whole, you are healthy, you are complete, just the way that God made you, just the way that you truly are in the process. There's many more magical trolley stops to come. So we look forward to seeing you for all new episodes of the Children's Books Spotlight series. But until then, thank you for helping us to walk home, the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.